For the 7th, we have Dooley's night out. It's always nice to have a night out, right? To go to the park and watch a movie, to just go out and be out. Dooley sat on the garden wall, feeling miserable. Laura, a little girl he belonged to, had gotten to bed and forgotten to bring him in. The evening shadows grew longer until the sun slipped down over the rooftops and it was dark. The house where Dooley lived was at the end of a street. In the daytime, it was full of people busy shopping, but the street was empty and slightly quiet. As the moon shone down, Dooley looked at the big front door of the house. He hoped it would open and Laura would come running out to rescue him. But the door stayed firmly shut, and one by one the lights in the house went out. Dooley was alone and afraid. He listened as the clock in the town struck midnight. 12 slow chimes, then footsteps. Someone was walking slowly and steadily along the street, stopping now and then. It was a policeman on patrol, checking that all the shops were safely locked for the night. When the policeman got to Dooley's house, he stopped. "You're out late," he said, giving Dooley a pat on the head. Dooley cheered up a bit after that. It was comforting to know that someone was around. Dooley gazed up at the stars and tried to count them, but he had counted up to 20 when the bell rang out shrilly from behind down the street. It was a fire alarm. A few minutes later, a fire engine came racing along. Oily black smoke was pouring out an office window. Suddenly, the quiet street was full of firefighters putting out the fire. Dooley could see everything. It was very exciting. By 3 o'clock, the fire was out, and the fire engine went away. In the silence that followed, Dooley was beginning to feel lonely again, when crash, a trash can, and its rubbish clattered to the ground. A cat had been scavenging for food, and had found some tasty bones to eat. Dooley hoped the cat would stay and talk to him, but she was in a hurry. "I'm off," said the cat, jumping over the wall. After that, Dooley didn't have a moment to himself, and at dawn the birds woke up and started singing. At 6 o'clock, the factory workers came walking down the street on their way to work, and at 7 o'clock, the mailman delivered letters to Laura's house. "You're up early," the mailman told Dooley cheerfully. Then at 8 o'clock, the best thing happened. The front door opened, and Laura came running into the yard. She took Dooley off the wall and hugged him tight. "Oh, Dooley," she whispered, "I forgot all about you. You must have been so lonely." Dooley smiled to himself. "I would have been," he thought, "but there was so much going on last night." So Dooley was left out all night. Dooley is the dinosaur on the wall. And he got to see so much last night. Let's see what's next. Okay. Sally was sitting in her yard when Sam walked over from next door. Whistling to himself, Sally quickly motioned to him to be quiet, then pointed at her family's cat, sitting motionless at the top of the front steps, looking out across the yard. "I wonder what he's thinking," Sally whispered. "Sam, do you think cats are smart?" "Smart? Of course they are. They are probably the smartest animal of all. Have you ever heard the story of Puss in Boots?" "No," Sally replied. "Well, it's a story about one smart cat." Puss in Boots. There was once a miller who had nothing to leave his 3 sons but his mill, his donkey, and his cat. The division was soon made. The eldest had the mill, the second had the donkey, and the youngest nothing but the cat. The poor young fellow was quite sad at his lot. "My brothers," said he, "may make a good living by joining together, but as for me, when I have eaten the cat and made a muff of his fur, I must die of hunger." The cat, who heard all this, said to him, "Do not worry, my good master. Just give me a bag and let me have a pair of high boots made for me so that I can scamper among the brambles, and you shall see that you are not so badly off as you imagine." Though the cat's master did not build very much on what he said, he gave Puss what he asked for. The cat pulled on the boots, and putting his bag around his neck with some bran in it, he went into the meadow. Where many rabbits lived, there he stretched out as if he were dead. Along at once a rash and foolish young rabbit came along and jumped into his bag. Master Puss immediately drew the string, took his prey to the palace, and asked to speak to his majesty. He was shown upstairs into the king's apartment, making a low bow. He said, "I have brought you, sir, a gift from my noble lord, the Montague of Carabas." For that was the title Puss was pleased to give his master. "Tell your master," said the king, "that I thank him." Another time Puss had among such standing corn, holding his bag open, where a brace and fine partridge ran into it. He again drew the string, and again he made a present of game to the king. The king received the partridges with great pleasure, and sent his greetings once more to the unknown Montague. The cat continued for 2 or 3 months to carry his majesty presents of game from his master. Then one day, when he knew the king was to take the air along the riverside with his daughter, the most beautiful princess in the world, he came to his master. "If you will follow my advice, your fortune is made. You have only to bathe in the river where I show you, and leave the rest to me." The Montague of Carabas did what the cat advised him, and without knowing why or wherefore, while he was bathing, the king passed by, and the cat began to cry as loud as he could, "Help! Help! The master of the Marquis of Carabas is drowning." As the king put his head out the coach window and quickly commanded his guards to run to the assistance of the Montague of Carabas, they soon fished the astonished Montagues out of the river. Meanwhile, the cat had hidden his master's shabby clothes under a big stone. Now he came running up to the king's coach, saying, "Rogues have made off with my master's clothes." The king immediately commanded the officers of his wardrobe to run and fetch one of the handsome costumes for the Lord Marquis of Carabas. Dressed in the fine clothes, the young man looked very handsome indeed, and the king's daughter was secretly attracted to him. The Marquis of Carabas had no sooner cast 2 or 3 respectful and tender glances at her than she fell desperately in love with him. The king, not noticing this, invited the young man into the coach to join them on their errands. The cat, overjoyed to see his project succeeding, marched on ahead, meeting the countrymen who were mowing the meadows. He said to them, "Good people, if you do not tell the king that this meadow belongs to the Marquis of Carabas, you shall be chopped up in as fine as herbs for the pot." So when the king asked whose meadows they were, the mowers replied, "The Marquis of Carabas." And the master cat, who still went on before, met some reapers and said to them, "Good people, if you do not tell the king that the cornfields belong to the Marquis of Carabas, you shall be chopped up into fine herbs for the pot." The king soon asked whom all the corn belonged to, and the Marquis of Carabas replied, "The reapers." The master cat, going on before, said the same thing as he met And the king was astonished at the vast estate of the Marquis of Carabas. Master Puss came at last to the great castle where lived a powerful orc, to whom all these lands really belonged. The cat asked to speak with him, to pay his respects, and the orc received him as civilly as an orc could. "I have been told," said the cat, "that you are able to change yourself into any creature that you choose." "This is true," said the orc briskly. "You shall now see me become a lion." Puss was so terrified at seeing the fierce lion near him that he scrambled up onto the rafts. When the orc resumed his natural shape, he came back down. "I have moreover been informed," said the cat, "that you can change yourself into the smallest animals, a mouse or rat. But I must say I consider this impossible." "Impossible," says the orc. "You shall see." And he changed himself into a tiny mouse and began to run about the floor. Puss promptly fell upon him and ate him up. Meanwhile, the king was passing the castle. Puss ran out and said to the king, "Your master is welcome to the castle of my lord, Marquis of Carabas." "And my lord Marquis?" cried the king. "Is this castle yours also?" "What could be finer? Let us go inside, if you please." The Marquis gave his hand to the princess, and they followed the king. They passed into the splendid halls, where they found the fine feast where the orc had prepared for some of his wicked friends. Who dare not enter now? His Majesty was profoundly charmed with the Marquis, and had his vast estate as well as the princess. "It will be your own fault, my lord Marquis," said the king, "if you are not my son-in-law." The Marquis, bowing low, accepted the honor, and married the happy princess the very day. The puss became the great lord who hunted mice. After that, only as a sport. So they made great lives for themselves by tricking the orc to turn into a mouse so the cat could eat him. Oh my, well, it's raining outside. Let's do "We sit and watch the rain as it falls from the sky, and we are glad to be inside where it is warm and dry. Oh yes, I do love the rain. It keeps the earth so clean and helps the pretty flowers grow from the mountains to the streams." Karina, baby, I love you, and I miss you, and I can't wait to see you. I hope that you're doing well today and just having a beautiful day. I miss you, baby.